Good morning and happy Sunday, everybody. I hope that you had a wonderful week. I hope you had a wonderful holiday. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. If I haven't said that to you already, thank you all so much for taking some time to spend to chat with us on a Sunday morning. This is our newest show. We're calling it Sunday Fun Day. We're going to be trying this out every other Sunday at the same time, where we just get together and chat about some of the stuff in true crime, some of the stuff in pop culture, or just whatever kind of crazy, wacky stories we can find, and check in with you guys on a Sunday before football and everything else you need to get done on a Sunday starts. So thank you guys for being here for the very first episode of Sunday Fun Day. Somebody told me that I never introduced myself, and maybe that's a good opportunity if we have some new folks watching this morning. My name is Joshua Ritter. I am a former LA district attorney, prosecutor. I was a prosecutor for about 10 years in the district attorney's office, and then I left to go private, and I am now a criminal defense attorney and starting this adventure on YouTube. So thank you guys for being here. Here's what we got planned for this morning. A lot of fun stuff. First of all, the TikTok ban is something I wanted to jump into because the Supreme Court is going to be hearing that case coming up on the 10th. So that's something that we're going to be hearing news about very soon. And maybe you guys are interested in hearing what that's all about. Then we found some stories that, we cover a lot of true crime stuff on this channel, but sometimes we don't have time for all of these other stories. And so we wanted to touch on some of those. There was a pregnant woman that was stabbed for leaving a bad pizza tip. We're going to talk about that. There was a girl out of Texas who poisoned a classmate's goat because she felt that classmate was cheating. We're going to talk about that a little bit. But the first thing that we wanted to do is, one of the things we wanted to try with this Sunday Fun Day is taking voice messages from all of you so that we could find another way for the Courtroom Confidential community to participate in these live streams. So if you don't know about it already, if you go to thecourtroomconfidential.com, we have a button there that you can click on, and it says, leave us a voice message. You can leave us a voice message. We will put a link to that in the comments as well, or into the description on this video as well. And a couple of you did that and reached out, and it's fun. And so we're going to play those this morning. We're going to answer those questions. We'll answer questions all along the way. Stay tuned for the very end. We have some announcements from you. And if you haven't already, please hit the like button so that we can get this video out to other folks and have a really fun conversation this morning. I wanted to thank some folks that I didn't get a chance to thank for gifts last week. That was Pammy for a super chat, HTC for a super sticker, and Mama She 13 for another super chat. You guys are all fantastic. And we had some brand new members, Pumpkin Porter, What the Fox, Rosemary J, Mama She 13, Jerry, Michael, Rachel, Bonnie Stonerman, and Alex. You guys are all fantastic. Thank you for joining our membership program. If you guys don't know about memberships, if you go on our YouTube page, you can sign up. If you click on join, but you have to do that from a computer, from a laptop. You can't do it from your phone, unfortunately, because I can't even give you a good answer as to why. All right, let's jump into, first of all, I see a lot of familiar names, Pammy and Shy Gal in the chat, Pumpkin Porter, and then some folks I don't see all that often. Hello to all of you. Thank you so much for being here this morning. And thank you, Laura, for the gifting of a membership. Appreciate that. All right, this was fun to me. We wanted to do this experiment about the voice messages. We weren't sure if anybody was going to respond. We weren't sure if anybody would be into it, but I think this is going to be a fun thing that we can continue to do on these Sunday shows. So let me get this all queued up for you guys. All right. And Kaylin's going to tell me if she can hear this or not, and we hope that the audio is going to work on this thing. This first message is from a member who's been with us, I feel like, from the very beginning. Alicia K. Mayo, you're always fantastic. Thank you for all of your support. And this was Alicia's question.
can you explain to me what happened with the Jake Wagner sentencing today and do so like I'm 5 because I don't understand.
Hold on.
Hello, Joshua. It's Alicia K. Mayo here. Can you explain to me what happened with the Jake Wagner sentencing today and do so like I'm 5 because I don't understand. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah. So if you guys hadn't heard, if you have not been following the Pike Massacre case, this is a really awful case where essentially one whole family wiped out another whole family. 8 people were slaughtered and murdered. And it's a case that we have not been following as closely on this channel as some other channels have. But recently there was a sentencing of one of the individuals named Jake Wagner, who is admitted to having pulled the trigger in killing 5 of the 8 people. And he was recently sentenced to 32 years in prison. Well, it's life in prison, but eligible for parole after 32 years. And people who have been following this case closely were shocked. I was shocked as well, and I'm going to explain to you why. But I don't feel I don't want to get into the entire background on the whole case and who all the players are involved, because again, I don't want to give you guys information that I'm as comfortable as being proficient on. But I can tell you about sentencing, and I can tell you about judges and how they interact with prosecutors, and how I am truly bothered by what took place in this case. Okay, so let's just talk about what happened and a reaction to that. First of all, 32 years for 8 murders, 5 of which he admitted to pulling the trigger on. That is, if you told me nothing else about it, beyond offensive, I think, on any degree. 8 murders, premeditated murders, should put you away for the rest of your life, and in many different jurisdictions, you'd be looking at the death penalty. There is no convincing of me that should be anything less than you do not have the privilege of spending any time amongst the rest of us in society for the rest of your life. I'm sorry. I cannot imagine any kind of mitigation that would allow for somebody to be eligible for parole after committing 8 murders, premeditated slaughter of an entire family. In California, just so that you get an idea, California not being the most conservative state in the union, even in California, 1 first-degree murder gets you 25 years. The use of a handgun in that murder gets you an additional 25 years. That's 50 years to life for 1 murder in California if you use a handgun. So the idea that after 32 years, this person would be eligible for parole, having wiped out 5 people at your own hand and participated in the murder of 3 others, doesn't make any sense to me. Now, the judge, in his explanation, said that this had to do with a couple of different things. And one of the things he pointed out was that he didn't feel it was right to sentence him to life without parole when somebody else was sentenced to life without parole. Another participant in these murders was sentenced to years in prison, life without parole. And that person went to trial. And it raises an interesting question about, should there be a benefit for accepting responsibility? But also, is there a punishment for going to trial? And in my view, there should never be a punishment for going to trial. That is a constitutional right that you have. No matter what crime you're committed of, you're allowed to say, hey, I want my day in court, and there should be no punishment from the government for exercising your own constitutional rights. Just as a statement, as a concept, I think that we can all agree upon that. Now, should somebody benefit if they say, you know what, instead of putting everyone through all of that trouble, I'm going to go ahead and accept my responsibility early? Yes, there should absolutely be a benefit. And the judge highlighted that Jake Wagner had helped the state make their case. Apparently, he had provided them with some explanation and some evidence. and that therefore he deserves less time. And here's where I start to really get bothered by this whole thing. First of all, he received a benefit. The state decided they're not going to pursue any kind of death penalty against him. They're not going to do any worse to him, but it was deserving of life without parole. And if anyone's in a position to decide whether or not he helped the state, wouldn't it be the state? And the state made a bargain with him, and he accepted that bargain. He knew going in what he was going to be sentenced to, according to the state, and he accepted the deal. Okay, it's a deal. It's a contract that took place between the state and this defendant, and he accepted it. But this idea that he deserves less time, that somehow the judge, this is not a mathematical question, okay? This is not a question of, well, you got life, therefore somebody else who helped should get less than life. That's not how this works. This works as what is the right thing to do and what is justice. And I don't think it's justice to say that 32 years in prison is what you should serve, having taken the lives of 5 different people and participated in 8 murders total. Again, he made the deal. He accepted the deal. He knew what he was going to get. Everyone understood the terms of that deal. Unless the judge feels that that is somehow a gross miscarriage of justice, I don't think the state should get involved. Robin Hood asked a good question. Can the state appeal? Not really, no, because it's already happened and he's already waived all his rights, and it would be prejudicing him, the defendant, to undo all of this. So as far as I'm concerned, unless I'm missing something entirely, this is a done deal. The other point I want to make about this is what precedent is this judge setting moving forward with this prosecutor's office? Now, I understand this judge came out of retirement to handle this case, but if I'm a prosecutor in that jurisdiction, I am very reluctant to allow a judge to ever get involved in my case again. In other words, if they want to take a plea from the judge directly, fine. But I don't know if I'm getting involved in plea negotiations ever again, because if the judge can just simply undo it like this, what protection do I, as the prosecutor, as the representation of the people, have that a deal I have made, and maybe they didn't want this deal, you know, all of this idea about him helping out the prosecution, maybe they really need all of that help, and they were trying to do save people time and the exhaustion and the emotional turmoil of going through a trial. But to just rip that out from underneath the people, you're going to discourage any kind of plea negotiation moving forward. Can an appeal court change his sentence? I mean, there was nothing about the sentence that seemed like what the appeal court would be looking for. And this is Jerry Michael asking this question. What the appeal court would be looking for is some sort of abuse of discretion on the part of the judge. I don't know if it's come that far. I don't know if you can say that this is an abuse of discretion, because he actually sentenced him according to certain guidelines. It's just he took the most drastically reduced side of those guidelines. So that's the other point I was making. Other point I wanted to make is that moving forward, prosecutors in that county are going to be very reluctant to deal with any other, to plea negotiate with any other defendants moving forward, knowing that it can be blown up by this, like this, by judges. And the final thing on this is part of these negotiations, and I've seen this and I've done this as a prosecutor, is you make a deal with someone that this is what they can earn themselves to if they testify. If they testify honestly and truthfully at trial. And you're very reluctant to get into these conversations about what they will actually get, because you eventually have to put that person up on the stand. Now think about it. When this guy takes the stand, if he does, the cross-examination of him is going to be all about the idea that you got 32 years. Aren't you very willing to say anything and everything the prosecution wants you to say because you got 32 years? Look at how it ruins him as a potential witness for the prosecution by taking this plea before the trial and by giving him this incredibly sweetheart of a deal. It just makes him, I feel, useless as a witness for the prosecution, because the defense attorney is going to have a field day. Who are you going to believe, ladies and gentlemen? The guy who got 32 years for pulling the trigger on 5 different people and is now willing to point the finger and say whatever the prosecution wants him to say? I mean, just think about how that's going to play with a jury. So that is me nearly wearing out my voice, ranting about how awful I feel this entire plea was. But thank you again, Alicia K. You are fantastic for asking the question and for being one of our first guinea pigs in this whole leave us a voice message experiment. Should we do another one? Tell me if you guys can hear this. We're still working out the kinks, okay?
Hello to the Courtroom Confidential community. Thank you for your great work and superb legal analyses. This is CJ from Los Angeles. I love this channel and the community even more. My question is as follows. Do you think that Mangione was overcharged in respects to the federal charges? Are they making an example out of him in light of the fact that there are hundreds of murders every day in the United States? Thanks so much, and I look forward to the next episode.
That was from CJ in LA, another longtime supporter of the channel. You are fantastic, CJ. Thank you so much. We actually played this at this message may sound familiar to some of you that were on our members only live that we had earlier this month, but I wanted to play it again for everybody because it's a great question about Luigi Mangione. This is the man who was arrested for the murder of the healthcare insurance CEO in Manhattan. He was charged by the state with murder, with a special allegation of it being involved in terrorism and therefore making it first-degree murder, making him eligible for life without parole. As he arrives in New York, he is first shuttled over to the federal court because, surprise, surprise, he's now also been charged by the federal government with murder, amongst other things, but murder with the use of a gun, making him eligible for the death penalty federally. And the question that CJ asks is this piling on? Is this overdoing it? Why are they doing this? I'll be quick about this. First, are they allowed to do this? Yes, they are. Do they run into any problems with double jeopardy? Very likely no. One, they are charging him with different crimes. I realize that both of them carry the word murder in it, but it's got different elements. Therefore, it's not the same crime. Therefore, he's not put in jeopardy twice for the same crime. Two, the government, the federal government and the state of New York are separate sovereignties. So there's a long-held kind of idea that the federal government can act independently and charge someone with much of the same conduct, but a different type of crime, and it not be double jeopardy. So yes, they're allowed to do it, but why are they doing it? And I think that's what CJ is really getting to. That is a question I think that's more difficult to answer, and that's something I can't quite wrap my head around, because the federal government could charge alongside the state government many different crimes. They would be bogged down with all of the crimes they could charge across the country. There are overlapping crimes that both the federal government could get involved in and the state government could get involved in. But you don't see that. The federal government usually stays out of these things. They usually allow the states to handle these types of things, unless it involves, international crimes or interstate crimes. Then you'll see things where the federal government gets involved. First example that comes to mind is P. Diddy. P. Diddy lived in Florida, lived in Los Angeles, trafficked people across the country, allegedly, to participate in these sex crimes and sex assaults. All of that involves interstate, conspiracy, all of this stuff where you would expect the federal government to get involved. At the same time, he could be charged on the state level, but this case with P. Diddy, they decided to take it federally. Why? In a murder like this. Now, I realize that this is not your ordinary murder. I realize it's involving high public interest, and it's involving, a person who was doing it. I believe that the terrorism allegation, it does have some merit to it. He's doing it to make this statement. But it is just a murder that took place on the streets of New York, and why the federal government would be involved is an interesting question. And I my first thought was maybe they're doing it for as insurance, no pun intended, but as the idea that if something falls apart with the state case, at least there's still a federal case. But again, doesn't really answer my question all that satisfactorily. It also could be that they want to make an example out of him, that they want to say, listen, you go about assassinating someone just because they are involved in an industry that you don't appreciate or you have problems with, you could be subject to the death penalty. And maybe that's the message the federal government is trying to send. Jen St. Peter says, can you explain how it's considered terrorism? Is it because he didn't know the man? It wasn't personal. It's kind of along those lines. Terrorism, do I have it here? I might still have the documents here, but terrorism is with the idea of, here it is, to intimidate or coerce a civilian population or influence the policy of a unit of government by intimidation or coercion. So it's the idea that you're not killing someone merely for you want that person dead, but you're trying to send a message to the greater public, to the greater community, to the greater civilian population that will cause them to be intimidated or coerced into doing something. You're trying to get the general population to respond in some sort of way by committing that murder, by committing that act, whatever it is, that makes it terrorism. I think that there's a way to make an argument that this was terrorism, but it's still, end of the day, interesting to me that the federal government is getting involved. It's highly unusual. I wonder if it has to do with politics. I wonder if it has to do with sending a message. I think probably more than anything else, the answer lies in the idea that they're very concerned with there being copycat people, with there being other people who decide they have a problem with not just the insurance industry, but maybe it's the oil industry, or maybe they have a problem with, the gun industry and starting to take out and assassinate these CEOs of those different types of companies and things. And they want to send a message that the federal government is also going to come after you for something like this, and that you could be subject to the death penalty. I think that might be the answer at the end of the day. But thank you again, CJ, in LA, for that question. So leave us some messages, guys. I think that was fun. I liked doing that. Leave us some messages. Go to thecourtroom.confidential.com, click on the button, leave us a voicemail, and we will get to your question at the next Sunday Fun Day that we do. All right, let's jump into some of the topics that we wanted to talk about today, unless we had some other questions that I'm missing. Let me see. If you can tell, my voice is a little strained this morning, and that has nothing to do with fun activities that I took part in over New Year's at all. It has to do with, I got 3 little ones in the house, and they will cough directly onto your face if they've got a cough, and I think that's what I may have picked up. All right. Let's move on to TikTok. This is really interesting to me, but it's also going to be in the news quite a bit, because here's what happened. Biden signed as part of a foreign aid bill, effectively a ban of TikTok. And it wasn't, the law wasn't TikTok has to go away. The law was that as of January 19th, it cannot be controlled by a quote unquote foreign adversary, meaning any government that has historically been adverse to the United States government. That is countries like China, Iran, North Korea, Russia, and Venezuela. Okay. So it's not TikTok you have to go away. It's TikTok, or rather ByteDance, you cannot be owned by or influenced by or controlled by a foreign adversary. Why? They're concerned with data sharing. They're concerned with all of this information that we're giving to TikTok. Can that be used by the Chinese government? And it's not so much that TikTok wants to know what videos you're watching and what videos you're liking and what cool new dances you're learning. It's the idea that TikTok can be used to influence people. And I think that is probably very true, that if the algorithm were tweaked in a certain way, it can send certain messages to the millions upon millions of users that TikTok has. So this is, for right or wrong, however you guys feel about this whole thing, this is what the government has decided to do. So what's going to happen? Well, there's several things that could take place. First of all, before the 19th, the president, whether that's Biden or by that time Trump, could grant a 90-day extension. So all of this could be a big buildup for a big nothing again, and a 90-day extension could be granted because they're trying to allow time for ByteDance to sell this company to somebody that is not a quote-unquote foreign adversary. But before any of that, the Supreme Court has decided to hear this case. Why? Because ByteDance sued to stop the ban. An appellate court ruled against ByteDance, and now that has been appealed up to the Supreme Court for the question of, does this law violate the First Amendment? And that's a really interesting question, because is the government trying to stop speech, or are they trying to stop who owns the mechanisms by which that speech is disseminated? And is that a restriction on our right to free speech? Really interesting questions, probably several degrees above my pay grade. But the Supreme Court is going to give us a decision on this, which I think will be fascinating, because it does kind of, for the first time, bring up some questions about First Amendment free speech issues in this new technological age that we're living in, like we've never seen before. Alicia K, thank you so much for your message. Asks, could this possibly expand to other companies of similar ownership? I think absolutely. I think depending on what the Supreme Court says here, I think it would open up the opportunity for the government to start to say, you know, which different companies owned by foreign adversaries are somehow a threat to our national security, and therefore the government can do something about it. Again, they're not, I think an important distinction to make is they're not saying TikTok has to go offline, that TikTok has to be destroyed, that TikTok has to end. They're just saying you can't be owned. So it could still exist as long as it's under the ownership of somebody who's not a foreign adversary. So that could happen with the Supreme Court. But really what the Supreme Court could, if the Supreme Court says, yes, it is a violation, then we've got a bunch of other questions. What's going to happen next? If the Supreme Court says it's not a violation of the First Amendment, then that ban on the 19th goes into effect. So what happens on the 19th? Well, they cannot force ByteDance to sell. ByteDance could say, we're not doing this. And all that would do is they can't force you to not have it on your phone either. All that would do was force the companies, the app stores, to no longer carry it. So Google Play and Apple App Store would no longer have TikTok on their app store. They would no longer service that application. They would no longer allow updates to that application. So you still might be able to access TikTok on your phone, but it will just start to become buggy and glitchy and unusable as time goes on. The other thing I think that you'll start to see is TikTok makes its money through advertisers. The amount of people who pour money onto that application, knowing that millions upon millions of eyes are going to be on it. Well, if you are a company, a legitimate company, and this is a dying application, you're not going to dump a bunch of money into it. But if you're kind of a garbage company who's just looking to get some cheap advertising anywhere you can get it, you probably will put some money into it. So if it does get removed, I imagine the ads that you will start to see on TikTok will become increasingly bizarre and garbage-like. Here's the thing, though, and the question I pose to you guys about if you're really trying to contemplate what's going to happen here. TikTok, this is according to the Wall Street Journal, I read an article on this, generates $300 million in earnings per month. 300 million per month. 170 million Americans are on TikTok. 7 million businesses are on TikTok. It accounts for 4% of the digital advertising market worldwide. That is huge numbers and huge money. And end of the day, I don't think there is a world we live in where that kind of money is just going to go away and that somebody is not going to purchase this application. They're not going to, TikTok's not going to allow it to die on the vine. ByteDance is not going to allow TikTok to die on the vine. They're not going to just dig their heels in and say, fine, then don't carry us in America. It is the largest market in the world. They have way too much money to lose, way too much money to gain in the future. Somebody is going to purchase this company, and I think we're going to see some iteration of TikTok moving forward. I just can't see that not happening. One last point on this. If a company comes along and purchases, and there have been groups that have been cobbled together trying to make this purchase, and maybe they're just waiting to the very end to get themselves a good price, they get all the data too. And that's a huge part of this. That is not just they're buying, 170 million American users who are going to be doing goofy dances on there. That is all of that data, and we know how important and how valuable all of that data is. So if you guys got questions on this one, like I said, January 10th, the Supreme Court's going to hear it. We don't know when they're going to come out on a ruling on it. I imagine the way this will go is it'll probably get postponed past the 19th, but we will be hearing something about TikTok within the next month in this coming new year. All right. Next on the agenda is this really bizarre and awful case out of Florida. Sorry, Floridians, but Florida coming with the craziness again. This is about a poor pregnant woman who was stabbed 14 times, guys, over a $2 tip. She required emergency surgery. She had her lung punctured. She was stabbed in her chest, her arms, her abdomen, and her legs. It is awful. This wasn't when I first kind of saw the headlines to this thing, I thought it was like, somebody got poked with a pen or something. This is a legit stabbing. They punctured this woman enough through her chest that it collapsed one of her lungs. Horrible, horrible story. Here's what takes place here. Apparently, a woman delivers a pizza to this pregnant woman's home. The pizza cost $33. The pregnant woman, the purchaser, hands her a $50 bill and asks for change. The delivery woman says, it's a policy, we don't make change. She says, oh, okay, well then let me see what I can do. Searches around, finds other cash, but with that other cash, the smaller bills, is only able to give a $2 tip. So this, to me, would change kind of my view of this whole thing. It wasn't that the purchaser, the pregnant woman who just wanted a slice of pizza, was trying to be cheap. It was that she was put into this situation where I'm not going to give you a $20 tip, and with the other cash I have, all I'm left is to give you a $2 tip. Well, the delivery woman was upset by this, apparently rolled her eyes or something, gave her a dirty look, and left. Sometime later, she returns with a unidentified male who has a gun. They force themselves inside of the woman's home with a gun. They put the boyfriend of the woman inside of the bathroom. When the woman goes for her phone to call 911, they smash it. They took items from the room, and then they apparently the female stabs it was a hotel, not a home. Thank you, Afton. They stab the pregnant woman 14 times in front of her 5-year-old daughter. When I read all of this turned this into, perhaps a bizarre, perhaps a maybe there's some comical element to all of this. This is a very serious case at this point. You are talking, she has now been charged with home invasion with a firearm, attempted murder, and kidnapping. This is a life case. This is a life case. Kidnapping with the use of a gun, with attempted murder, with a home invasion, all of that stuff, any one of those could expose you to life. This is a life case. This woman could be going to prison for the rest of her life because she was upset over a $2 tip. It's absolutely mind-blowing to me, the kind of senseless, unpredictable violence. Tammy Joyce says, the delivery woman sounds like she tried to scam her out of the change to force a higher tip. I agree with you. Probably did. Probably thought, I'm going to tell her I can't take change and play upon her feelings of guilt, and hopefully she'll just hand me the $50. I'm also wondering, too, if they saw that she had a $50 bill and maybe she's rifling around in her purse for other cash, and maybe they see quite a bit of cash and they think, well, now we're just going to come back and rob this person. I don't know. All I know is that you enter a person's dwelling, a hotel or a home or not. Thank you, Afton. Even if it's your hotel and you're living there, that's considered home invasion. You break in there with a gun, with the intent to commit a felony therein, with the kidnapping by moving the boyfriend to the other room and locking him in there, with the assault and the attempted. That's an attempt murder, by the way. Easily could have died from that. All of that put together, that's an absolute life case, and you're going to prison for a very, very, very long time. So, every once in a while, I don't know what the lesson learned out of all of this is you can never be too safe. You can never be too careful. You can never, I don't even know who knows where violence could be lurking around the next corner. It's really, really shocking and awful stuff. So that is the latest out of Florida. Once again, no offense to Florida, but thank you always for bringing your best. All right, moving on to hopefully pivoting to something a little bit more lighthearted is the last case I wanted to chat with you guys about today. And then we'll get into some announcements and fun stuff coming up. And if you guys have other questions or things you want to ask me along the way, please feel free. But this is a case about a 17-year-old girl in Texas who has now admitted to, I guess, poisoning and killing the goat of a classmate. Now, I can already tell, if you guys are thinking that this case is too silly, the article I read on this came from the New York Times. So even the New York Times picked this thing up. But apparently the story goes is this goat starts having it's on a high school where they actually have a barn. It's one of those high schools in a rural community where like agriculture and farming is part of what they teach. There's a barn on the campus. The kids take care of some of these animals. She is seen on surveillance. This was sad. Force feeding the goat pesticides with a syringe. So this isn't like she dumped some stuff into the goat's feeding trough. She like took it upon herself to kill this goat. She admits to it later, but if that wasn't enough, they go through her phone search history and she's got things like, can straight bleach kill goats? How much bleach kills a goat? And then the last one, which was the kicker, how to clear your search history, which she obviously didn't, whatever help she got out of that, she obviously didn't use because they were able to find her search history. But it's just a sad, goofy, horrible story. And this poor girl, she's 17 years old. I doubt she's probably getting any jail time out of this whole thing, but it's like such a awful case. I'm really concerned about this 17-year-old psyche at that young an age to take an animal's life like that. Suzanne says, what indeed was the rationale or poisoning the goat? She doesn't have a great answer. Her answer is that she felt the keeper of the goat, the owner of the goat, was a cheater, and she, quote unquote, doesn't like cheaters. I think she's got some problems. I think there's some other stuff going on in that kid's head. not to get too dark about all of this, but this is how it all kind of begins. People who have problems later on in life and the violence that they commit, it usually starts against animals. Alicia K says, psych eval ASAP. I completely agree with you. All right. So that is all of the stuff I've got for you guys today. If you've got questions or other things, let me know. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's going on next week. Thank you, Laura, for the gift of a membership. Appreciate that. Yeah, if you guys don't know about our membership program, we work really hard on it. Oh, we've got some Jake Wagner questions. Do we have any more of those? If we have other questions, I'll answer them because we got a little bit more time. But Donna says, Josh, I'm concerned about the judge that covered this case. What can be done? I think we're talking about Wagner. Here's a final kind of thought on that judge. Here's the problem. Judges, maybe people don't realize how much authority and how independently judges can act and how much damage they can do if they're a bad judge and how much that usually cannot be undone. What this judge here, I don't think can be undone. What the appellate courts are looking for is what's called an abuse of discretion, meaning did this judge either say a reason that was so outside of the bounds of what is acceptable, or did the judge do something without providing a reason that's so far outside of the bounds of acceptable? If the judge had just let him go, given him probation, I think yes. I think this could be undone. I think there is an argument that's abuse of discretion. But the judge gave a lot of reasons. I don't agree with those reasons, but the judge said that he was balancing fairness compared to what other people had received and the culpability that other people involved in this case had. He talked a lot about people who were sentenced to life who had also participated in the murder, people who were took part in planning the murder who were sentenced to 30 years. He was trying to balance all of that. He talked a lot about how somebody who accepts a responsibility should be given some sort of benefit of having done the right thing. Again, all of that I think doesn't make any of it right, but all of it does give the appellate courts a reason to look at what he did and say that was not an abuse of discretion. And judges are given wide latitude in many cases. And believe me, the thing that was most frustrating to me as a very young prosecutor was what the judges on the bench could do. And you may feel like you're all operating under the same rules and you're trying to do the right thing and you've got the law behind you, and a judge can simply look at you and go, nope, don't see it that way. Moving on. And there's not a damn thing you can do about it many times. It's incredibly frustrating. When you've got a judge who's got a bad ego and is not very smart, that is a recipe for absolute disaster. Tammy Joy says, as a prosecutor, you can choose not to prosecute with a judge you don't trust. Many jurisdictions allow for some sort of way to challenge a judge. Where I practice in California, you can challenge any judge you want for no reason whatsoever one time. You don't get to forum shop. That's what they're concerned with. You don't get to continue to challenge judges till you get to the judge you like. But if you have a judge that you feel you don't want to deal with for whatever reason, you can challenge that judge. And then if you feel that that judge has demonstrated actual prejudice against your case, there's another way to challenge another judge after that. But in most jurisdictions, there is a way to challenge the judge, but you got to be very wise about it. You got to use your discretion, because many times I've been in this position where I challenged a judge, didn't like that judge, and I got a judge that was even worse. So it's a gamble that you take, but it's a very frustrating situation. But unfortunately, I don't think there's anything that can be done about it. I don't think it can be undone. The only saving grace I will say after this is that he is only eligible for parole after 32 years. I don't know if a parole board exists that is going to look at a man who participated in 8 different murders and say, I'm going to grant you parole at the first parole hearing. So it may be one of those situations where this judge did something that we all don't agree with, but at the end of the day, it's going to land in the hands of other far more reasonable people who will just continue to deny him his parole at every single hearing and, for the rest of his life. I don't know. I mean, Charles Manson was up for parole. Charles Manson was, quote unquote, eligible for parole for many, many decades and got denied parole again and again and again. So hopefully that's what actually takes place in this case. Great questions, guys. All right. Here's Friday. We had our latest news brief episode where we covered everything that took place in the week. If you guys haven't listened to that or watched that, please check it out. We talk about Liam Payne, the case out of Argentina, the former band member of One Direction who fell off of a balcony. There's now been a bunch of charges brought against people involved in that. Talked about Sidney Powell being granted a new trial. We talked a little bit about Jay-Z. Check that out. That was on Friday. That's already out. Coming out on Monday, premiere on this channel, live premiere, 5 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. This Monday, January this 26th, we are doing the top 10 of 2024. We put a lot of work into this. I think it's a really fun episode. We looked back on the entire year and picked a lot of cases that we felt like made 2024. And by the way, it's so funny when you take a look back, how you realize how crazy it was all in one year. 2024 was wild. So please check that out on Monday. Like I said, it's going to be a live premiere, so we will be in the chat and we would love to see you all there. On Wednesday, we always do our Wednesday night live. Every Wednesday, 5 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. Come check it out with us. Afton, thank you so much for the gift of memberships. Every Wednesday, 5 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, our Wednesday night live, where we just kind of cover topics midweek, what's been happening, what's been going on. But more than anything else, thank you guys so much. Thank you, Shy Gal, for the gift, for being a part of this new Sunday Fun Day. I hope you liked it. I hope that this is fun to you. We wanted it to be just kind of a weekend check-in, maybe some more off-the-wall, lighthearted, pop culture, goofy stuff that we could talk about. And please leave us these voice messages. Would love to hear from you guys. Thank you again, CJ in LA and Alicia K. Mayo, for leaving a message. Would love to hear from all of you folks. You're all fantastic, and you're what makes this channel and this community so wonderful. So check it out. Go to thecourtroomconfidential.com, click on the button, leave us a message, ask a question, say hello, tell us a funny story, whatever it is. We would love to hear from you. In the meantime, thank you guys again so much. And we will see you here, not next Sunday, but the Sunday after that for another Sunday Fun Day. Take care, everybody.